This episode is sponsored by I'm Just Playing, but I do have two things for you today. So we recently released a mini prospecting course, 100% free to access, where I break down the script that my last team used to go from 6 meetings a month to 60 meetings per month. There's a lesson on how to write great first outbound emails, and then there's another lesson on video and voice note prospecting and best practices, and there's so much more in the course as well. If you want to get free access, just click the link in the description below. Now, alternatively, I said there's a second thing. Maybe you don't need prospecting support, but maybe you need help running better demos or scoring your deals with MedPick, or you need help with prospects that are ghosting you. If this is the case and you want to unlock some of these trainings and resources, go ahead and join the prospecting course anyway, because you'll find there's other resources and more content in the mini content vault folder. So go sign up today and unlock these resources. Right, let's get into the episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hit Your Numbers podcast. So I want to kick things off by saying this. Most deals in 2025 don't die because competitors came in cheaper or because your product wasn't good enough or was missing features. They die because things get into your buyer's head. So I want to break this down today, okay? Buyers get scared. They're scared they're going to make the wrong call. I did an episode recently about, buyers suffer with buyer's remorse. They're going for promotions. They have internal reputation. A couple of wrong decisions can really mess that up, okay? So scared buyers will kind of put their guard up, okay? They'll think they'll regret the decision, so they'll avoid making it completely, okay? And what we find when we look at the data, either when we look at research or when we do like win-loss analysis with the sales organizations that we work with, is we typically find more than half of stalled deals aren't lost to the status quo, they're lost to customer indecision, okay? So today, I want to hopefully give you some frameworks, some tips, some tools to help you kind of overcome some of this, tackle some of it head on, prevent it from happening so that you can win more deals and ultimately earn more commission, okay? So I'm going to break this down into 3 parts this episode. So part 1 is going to be around what do you need to do. The second part is going to be why it matters in today's selling environment. And then 3, most importantly, I'm going to give you some kind of actionable kind of tactics that you can implement immediately after listening to this episode, okay? So let's kick things off around like what reps need to do, okay? So there's 4 kind of buckets that this falls into. And if anyone's read the book called The Jolt Effect, this will kind of resonate with you, okay? So the first thing that elite sales reps are doing in 2025, and they've been doing this for years, is they've been judging indecision. Okay, they've been judging indecision. Great reps are really good at spotting hesitation, not lack of interest. Okay, so they're always on the lookout for hesitation from the buyer so that they can do something about it without it happening later in the sales process and them getting bad news. Okay. The other thing that elite sales reps are doing is they offer and make recommendations. Like our job as salespeople is to be the guide, not just to provide a massive like menu of items that you can order at the restaurant and overwhelm people. Okay, our job is to make a recommendation. We're the experts. If we want to be seen as trusted advisors, we need to act like consultants and we need to guide people and help make recommendations based on the discovery that we've been doing. Okay. The third thing you really want to think about is limit the exploration. So many buyers will be speaking to different vendors, and I quite like that because it shows they're really, considering solving this problem. I think it's a good thing. Obviously, differentiation is important at that point, but they're going to be looking at lots of different vendors now. What we need to avoid happening is them drowning themselves in endless research, and I'm going to give you some tips today to help us do that and help kind of control the way they go to market to review vendors. And then finally, I think great sales reps, they take risk off the table, right? They completely remove fear of regret, fear of making mistakes, that whole kind of nervousness of losing internal reputation, right? So those are kind of the 4 key areas that elite sellers are focused on to avoid deal stalling, deal slipping, and ultimately losing them to do nothing, right? So kind of what you need to do, focus on those kind of 4 areas, all right? The reason that I think this is so important, and I wanted to do this episode today, is if you think about the world we live in, in 2025. It's very different to what it was like maybe in 2022. And then before that, right, with the rise of AI, you've got so many opportunities to do research without speaking to a salesperson. I mean, in fact, we've had a couple of customers sign up to our training platform, and in the onboarding form where we ask people, hey, how did you find out about the platform and the training programs? They said ChatGPT recommended the Sales University, which is pretty cool, as a trusted training partner. So like buyers have got all of this information that can overwhelm them. I think our job is to kind of help them make sense of all of that information, right? So like the first thing I'd be thinking about is information overload. Buyers, what do they say? Like 70, 80% of the buying journey is now done without us. They can find a lot of information that they need online. They don't need more information from us when they speak to us. They need better clarity, right? Our job is to help them make sense of everything that they've identified through research, plug some of the gaps for sure, but doing it in a really clear way, not trying to be clever and overwhelming people. That's where we can do a lot of damage to our pipeline. The second thing I'd be thinking about is like AI driven sameness, right? So you go to ChatGPT, hey, write me an outbound sequence based on this. Like everybody's email sequence looks the same. Loads of people's pitch decks look the same. Messaging is starting to look the same now because people are using AI without feeding it like what good looks like and things like that. And they're just simply copying and pasting it, right? So for me, I think that differentiation comes from being a trusted human advisor. So knowing that my prospects are going to be going to AI, ChatGPT, whatever it might be to do their research, the massive opportunity for salespeople in 2025 is to differentiate themselves by being a trusted human advisor while their buyers are looking at AI for information, right? And then the other thing is like that fear of being wrong beats the fear of standing still. So nobody gets fired for doing nothing. Like I remember so many times when I've been trying to close deals with large organizations, and let's say it's like HR software where it's going to be used by every single employee at the company and they've got 50,000 employees. Like you get that wrong, like a lot of people are going to know about it. It can have a massive impact on your reputation, and like people can get fired for making the wrong call, especially if they've made a couple of bad decisions recently. So if people opt for status quo because it feels safer, they might get fired eventually for underperformance, but they're not going to get fired for making that decision, right? But they could get fired for investing in your solution and it not being the right thing. So I think the real competitor in 2025 isn't just like another vendor. It's like, I guess, the buyer's owning anxiety that kind of kicks in. All right. So just a couple of things to think about there. So let's kind of shift gears now into what you can actually do about it, right? Let's make this pretty practical so that you can walk away and kind of apply some of this stuff across these kind of 4 different buckets. So let's kick things off with judging indecision. So I mentioned earlier that like this is something probably the top priority for me at the moment. If you've got lots of like hesitation inside of your pipeline, here's a couple of things that might help you spot some of that, couple of questions that you might be able to ask, right? So let's just say you're on a call with a buyer, your champion's the VP of HR, I don't know, and you're selling HR software. And they're like, hey, we just need a little bit more time to compare some options, or, we had a look through the deck you sent us. Can you send us through, another case study or some more case studies, that kind of stuff. Like that kind of sounds like interest. But the reality is, if you actually read between the lines, if you're like really dialed in and present in that conversation, what you'll actually find is it's more hesitation, right? Like we need to review, a couple of options. You might think, hey, actually, they're doing more due diligence. This is a good thing. We've planted our differentiation. So I feel like we're in a good place there. But what they're actually saying is we need to compare some options. I'm not ready to take action right now. Or can you send me another case study? Because I'm not sold on the other 3 that I've read, right? And this is where that kind of doubt is starting to kick in. So what you could do in that situation, either if you're seeing it like I'm reading it, or maybe they're saying it in a slightly different way, is you might just say something like, and this is where like salespeople need to be bold and brave and be prepared to tackle risk head on. I might say something like, look, I get there's a sense that this maybe isn't about the product anymore. Maybe it's about lack of confidence you have in making the decision with us. Am I picking that right? Or maybe am I misreading some of the signals here? Just want to make sure that you and I are aligned here. Let me know how you're feeling right now. So call it out. I'm getting a sense of this. That typically means this. Am I on the right track, or am I reading this wrong? If they're a champion, they'll happily correct you. They happily kind of give you some feedback and make you feel a bit more confident that actually they just need to do a bit more due diligence. It's not hesitation. It's just that the board or procurement have asked them to do it, right? So just call out the real issue. Like, high performers don't ignore indecision. They surface it. They're always looking for it. They want to tackle it head on so that it doesn't bite them 2 months, 6 months later, whatever it is, based on your sales process. Okay. Second thing I mentioned is around like offering recommendations. Like, I'm a big fan of this. Like, I'm the expert, right? Like, I'm the AE or I'm the sales leader. Like, I work really closely with all of their peers, been doing this for a long time. Like, I should lead from the front and make strong recommendations. And sometimes I'm prepared to make a recommendation on like the lower cost solution, because I know it's going to earn me a bunch of brownie points, and I might even better lift them up before they sign the contract, or I'll likely lift them up in life. And that's a much easier sales process than trying to force everybody into the top package and then again creating some concerns or hesitation or fear on their side, right? So one of the worst things you can do, I think, is try and dump like 5 options in front of a buyer and say, like, what do you think? Like, I was doing a training a month or so ago with a fairly large team, and we were listening back to the calls, and they were presenting like 2 or 3 options on a slide when they're like presenting pricing. And then they ended it and was like, hey, what do you think? Like, which one do you want to go for? Right. And that can be overwhelming. If you do the maths as well on that, guys, like, let's say they're speaking to me, I've got 3 options, and then they're speaking to 3 other competitors. So there's 4 of us in play, and everybody's got 3 options. Like, that's 12 options they need to pick from now. Imagine you're going through that process, and this is a really expensive solution. It could make or break that promotion that you're going through. Like, you can understand why people start to feel overwhelmed and they start to jolt, as the guys found, like, back into their current state and starting to like maybe back it. All right. So I might say something like, if I was in your shoes, I'd probably go with option B or the second option. I think it fits best with, the growth plans that you guys have at the moment. I feel like it gives you enough capability to start with without overcomplicating things and risking, bad adoption, that kind of stuff. Should we get you and the team up and running with option B, right? And ask for the order. Okay, so simplify it. Maybe talk them through the options, but then be like, hey, look, I'd highly recommend that you forget about option A. I don't think it's going to be enough for you. I just think option C right now, based on where you guys are in that journey, it's probably going to be a bit overkill, and I think you'd be wasting money. I think option B is going to be best based on everything we've spoken about so far. Should we get you guys up and running? All right. You're giving them that like really simple, clear direction, making it easy for people to say yes. And for me, that's what, becoming a trusted advisor is all about. Building trust and credibility and advising people on the best solution, the best next step based on, good quality discovery. Okay. So third up, I want to talk to you about limiting or trying to control the way they go to market, again, in a professional way. All right. Because buyers love to keep digging around more demos. I mean, I remember selling HR software. HR, they're very nervous buyers because they usually don't have a seat at the table, budget to spend. They have to go to the COO or the CFO to get things approved in most cases, not all of the time. And they're looking to build reputation. They want a seat at the table, right? So they were always asking, can we do more demos? Can we just go over that again in a bit more detail? Can we spend a bit more time in the back end? Can we do a trial? Can we do a second like small pilot? Right. And they were just like digging and digging and digging. So like more demos, more white papers, more proof points, more case studies, more referrals, that kind of stuff. And it can kill momentum, right? So it's important that you start to see those signals when you're selling. And my kind of recommendation in most cases, instead of you like feeding that cycle, I'd start to set some kind of boundaries. Again, you need to understand your selling style, the buyer, and how you kind of pull that thing off. But I might say something like, look, I can share a couple more case studies or we can do another demo, but I've just found too much information can actually make decisions that little bit harder. Maybe like there's too many options and people start to wonder, am I making the right decision? How about we just, look at one that's most relevant to your, business and your context and, the discovery that we've done so far and kind of go from there. That would be my recommendation. Are you open to doing that next, right? So controlling the way that they go to market, helping them understand, hey, like if you guys spend far too much time doing this, it can actually be damaging, it can overwhelm you. And again, I think you need to make sure you've got a champion so you can have those conversations. Otherwise, people start to get their backs up, that kind of stuff, right? So just think about how you position that, but you definitely want to, try to limit the amount of due diligence they do because it can start to really overwhelm them, especially if you've got the competitors who've got bad salespeople where they start to push loads of different options. They can actually do, a lot of harm, right? So just think about that. And then the fourth thing I think about or kind of talk to you about today is like taking risk off the table. Like, here's the really big one. Like I said, a lot of buyers are going for promotion. They've got, commission or bonus or, share options, equity kind of baked into, their role or what they're trying to do next. And that fear of, making a mistake or getting it wrong or that regret kicking in. Yeah, that's a really big one. So instead of like pushing people for full rollout, if you start to see this, like maybe think about reducing the risk for them. But like, hey, why don't we just start off with like a small pilot, with a small team? Let's set some, success metrics. Let's say I'm selling HR software to a company that's got 5,000 employees. I'm like, hey, why don't we just start with the UK and, French team? And then when we hit these milestones, how about we expand it to the rest of Europe? And then how about we expand it into to a global kind of rollout? And, you'll see some impacts without locking into a long-term contract, that kind of stuff. Like, I've got a couple of customers that are really struggling with the opposite. So they're trying to sell, global deployments. And what they're finding is their prospects are pushing back and doing like 90-day pilots, paid pilots, but obviously significantly lower revenue, or they're doing smaller deployments because they're concerned, right? They haven't worked with you before. So that level of trust can only go so far. So maybe lead with that. If that, you are seeing that happening, again, that's going to help you with that trusted advisor status. Hey, look, I'm sensing some hesitation on your side. Totally get it. This is the first time you guys have rolled out, a HR solution like this. I think we're both aligned on, this is the right thing to do, but how about we do this? How about we roll it out for 1,200 people in UK and France? And then if we're able to start seeing the employee turnover rate, drop down to like this level, which I believe we'll be able to do within the first 90 days, then we can explore like a global rollout. That would be my recommendation. Are you up for, exploring that as an option? Okay. Another thing you might say is, look, we'll include an opt-out clause if certain benchmarks aren't met or success metrics aren't met or certain SLAs aren't, kept in check, right? Happy to put some of that in. Remember, just take all of the risk off the table, especially like in the first year. You can have like a multi-year contract, like a 3-year contract where like year one, it has this baked in and then after that it's excluded. Yeah, just think about how you can de-risk the decision, give them the permission to and the kind of freedom and confidence to take action, especially if this is the first time they're doing business with you or the first time they're investing in your category. That can be something that makes people really, really nervous. All right. So bottom line from today in sales, you don't win by pushing people or trying to force them to do something. You win by, kind of guiding them, being that guide, being a good project manager, making sure that everybody's aligned, and then making that, that clear recommendation, removing noise, taking risk off the table, spotting or looking for indecision, and tackling it head on in a very professional way using empathy, that kind of stuff. All right. So hopefully this was a helpful session. If you want to go into this in a bit more detail, I'll be open to doing like a live like Q&A or ask me anything, or even like a full-blown webinar masterclass on this. Like, I do see a lot of organizations struggling with this kind of stuff we've spoken about today on the podcast. So if you want to learn a little bit more, let me know. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you on an upcoming episode soon. All right, speak to you soon. Oh, and make sure you subscribe and leave a rating. It really, really helps us out. Appreciate your time. All right, thanks for listening to this episode. I've got something else I want to give you before we wrap up here. So we've built the leading skill optimization platform with 400 plus sales lessons, 12 courses from prospecting all the way through to late stage deal negotiation and more, one-to-one sales coaching and AI sales assistants. And I want to give you 7 days free access to the platform. The reason I want to do this is because nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. And after training and coaching hundreds of sales reps and teams in the last 2 years, most haven't mastered critical selling skills. And it's preventing them from being promoted, earning great money, and building a great career in B2B sales. So go to the revenueenabler.com, grab a free trial, and join hundreds of salespeople that are closing their skill gaps and mastering sales. There's a link in the video description. I'm looking forward to getting you set up. Give me a shout with any questions.